Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Power Rankings time. I hope everybody had an amazing Mother's Day weekend. Baseball is awesome. It's been a busy week. Haven't got to watch as much baseball as I'd like, but of course, I've been looking at the box scores every day, updating the Power Rankings daily, and that leaves us exactly where we are, coming off a series win off Pittsburgh. They're going to stay in last place. They got swept by Milwaukee early in the week. We got the Cincinnati Reds having just got their fourth win of the season, and we're 10 days into May. I think they're pretty much justified to stay there. And one series win, it's not going to hurt them or help them too much. Number 29, Detroit Tigers had a rough week, 1-1 against Pittsburgh, getting swept by Houston, 4 games. They're bottom of the Central. They're having a rough season so far. They started off all right, but it's quickly fallen apart for them, and we don't see that getting too much better for them. 28, moving up one spot. Nationals, 1-2 against Colorado, 1-2 against the Angels. They lost both series, but they picked up a win along the way. I'm thinking that they're a little bit better than Detroit right now, so that's why I got them above them. 27, Oakland A's, swept by Tampa Bay, by Miami? Minnesota, sorry. So swept both games, 0-6 on the week. Maybe could even drop them below Detroit before, because I think Detroit was ahead. But it's a rough season for the A's, and they probably can be intertwined any which way there, but they're going to be pretty much dead last in this division, except for maybe Texas might give them a run for their money. 2-0 against Philly, 1-1 against the Yankees. They had a pretty short week due to postponements and stuff like that. But just slightly ahead of the A's. Next up, we got Kansas City. 1-2 against St. Louis, 1-1 against Baltimore. They had a pretty okay week. Again, postponements over the weekend, and not too much more than that. Next up, number 24, we got the Pittsburgh Pirates, 1-1 against Detroit, lost to Cincinnati. Pittsburgh kind of hit their top point last week, probably top point since we started doing these over the 3 years ago. But they falling back to earth. Not a great week against two weaker teams, two bottom teams really. But we're going to give them a little bit of credit for the season they've put together thus far. Number 23, moving on up, 2-2 against Minnesota and 1-1 against Kansas City with the rain delay. 500 week for the Orioles. Moving on up, got to be somewhat happy the way Orioles are doing. Their pitching's been all right. They're picking up some wins, and they're definitely competing with every team they're up against. And before long, we might see them not the worst team in the division. Mind you, I do know Boston's below them. Next up, Chicago Cubs, 0-2 against the White Sox. And then I have them 0-3 against the Cubs, but I know they got swept by the Dodgers because it's the Sunday night game. So a really rough week for the Cubs after starting the season all right and maybe being in the conversation. They're barely ahead of Pittsburgh at this point. Number 21, dropping pretty drastically this week. We got the Miami Marlins 0-3 against Arizona, 1-3 against San Diego. So the West is just pounding them up. And after that 9-game winning streak, they've fallen a lot back to earth. And I don't think we can put them too much ahead of them because each team obviously ahead of them at this point, I think is a little bit better. Next up, Boston. I think possibly the lowest they've been in a long time. 1-2 against the Angels. Got swept by the White Sox over the weekend. It's just been a disaster of a season for the Red Sox so far. And at this point, we're not really talking about them having a chance at the playoffs. We're talking about whether or not they're going to be last in the division when it's all said and done. So right now, number 20. Across the league. Number 19, moving up. They've had a good week. We got the Arizona Diamondbacks, 3-0 against Miami, 2-1 against Colorado. They've been on a pretty good streak, and honestly, a little bit under the radar team that's been playing pretty well. Their pitching's coming through huge, but even their offense has been good. One loss this week, and I think it's back-to-back winning weeks for them. So they got to be pretty excited. Starting in the season at the bottom, they're working their way up to possibly getting into that third row, and then next thing you know, they're in the playoff hunt. So keep an eye on that. Number 18, even though they just lost to Arizona 2-1, like I just said, they beat Washington earlier in the week. And over the course of the entire season, I still give the edge to Colorado. had a good season so far and really winning a lot of series. If it wasn't for their division, I'd probably have them closer to the playoff race, but I think once all is said and done, they're going to pretty much secure in this kind of area. So yeah. Number 17, we got the Cleveland Guardians, 1-1 against San Diego. A good series over the weekend against Toronto, moving them up a couple of spots. 3-1 they went. And their offense, I have to admit, I thought their offense was going to be their biggest struggle, but it seems to be their biggest thing going for them right now. So Guardians starting to make a name for themselves in probably the weakest division in the American League. They might have a shot at that one. 16, we got the Phillies, 0-2 against Texas, 1-2 against Atlanta. Phillies are they're not putting anything together, it seems, and they keep having losing weeks. And honestly, I'm holding on to a slight thread that they're going to turn it around. That's why they're still right there in the middle. But another week or two, and they're going to fall them right down to kind of levels that we're talking about with Boston. Number 15, coming off a rough week, we got the Seattle Mariners, 0-3 against Houston, 1-3 against Tampa. So they went 1-6 on the week. Ever since they were kind of competing for that top spot in the division, they've really fallen. And at this point, we're not really seeing them as a playoff contender at the 15th, the midpoint of the league. Number 14, the White Sox. After that huge losing streak, they won 5-0 this week with Boston and the Cubs. And they're back in it. There's still a little bit farther ways to go. But at the same time, it's the White Sox. They've been dealing with injuries. They do technically maybe have the best roster in the division. And we would expect them to eventually pull it all together and get back into that playoff hunt. But for now, I'm being a little skeptical based on that large losing streak we did see them go on. Number 13, we got the Braves, 2-2 against the Mets, 2-1 against Milwaukee. They had a tough schedule this week, and they managed to come out above 500, so they got to be a little bit of steps forwards for Atlanta. World Series champs, they're now going to be starting to make up ground, and we're starting to see them right on the playoff bubble. They're obviously 6 games back from the Mets at this point, and the Mets seem to be the clear favorites in the division, so we expect Atlanta, they're going to have to compete for a wild card. And this week, if they continue to play like the way they did this week, they very much will be in there. Number 12, leading the division, the Minnesota Twins, 2-2 against Baltimore, swept the A's. They're looking good. Sonny Gray had a good outing and a small 1-0 win over the weekend. And the Twins got to be excited with where they sit this early in the season. They're one of the biggest turnarounds from last year so far this year. Twins, number 12. Number 11, we got the Giants, 0-2 against the Angels. Split the series over the weekend 2-2 with the Cardinals. And they're sitting there third, possibly tied with Colorado in that division. And they got a lot of work to do, and it hasn't been the best 2 weeks. They've kind of maintained a status quo. They kind of got to go on a heater, and they have to perform well against their own division if they're going to have a shot to get any really further up. Really, power rankings wise, I think the only way for San Francisco is to go up to a little bit here, or they got to go on a run. Number 10, after an awesome week, they're having a great road trip. 3-0 against Oakland, 3-1 against Seattle, Tampa Bay. Turning the corner, the West Coast has been really good for them. They're now second in the division. They passed the Blue Jays. But power rankings wise, I still have them number 10 for that. Number 9, we got the Cardinals. 2-1 against Kansas City, 2-2 against San Fran. They had a winning week, and they had a little bit of a match there with San Fran. They're on the road, so they got to give them that little bit of an edge. I do think the Cardinals at least have that division advantage that San Francisco does not have. Angels, number 8. They're slowly working their way up, winning series after series. They beat Washington 2-1, Boston 2-1, then won both. And their team's getting it done. Right now, top of the West, although Houston is striving hard, and talked about them last week, how I still have them ahead of the Angels. They're at number 7 right now. And they went 7-0 this week against Detroit and Seattle. So it was a strong week for them, and they're starting to show why they have been such a strong competitor in the American League for a number of years now. Next up, 6, dropping a couple spots. We got Toronto Blue Jays. Had a losing week. They lost to the Yankees early on in the week, and they lost to Cleveland over the weekend. Those are the first 2 series they lost. And there was a little bit of concern with their pitching. They're kind of holding on to this top row by a thread, and if they don't put up a good week next week, we could see them drop 4 or 5 spots, depending on how the teams below them perform. But it's pretty tight between 6 to like 12. Really, it's really tight. Probably could interchange any of those teams. Number 5, we got the Padres. They've been quiet, at least to me. 1-1 against Colorado, 3-1 against Miami. But they've maintained pace with the Dodgers. They got a good team on paper. They've been doing all this without Tatis. Padres quietly going under the radar, at least for me. But I do believe they deserve some respect to be in the top 5 now. Leaving number 4, we have the Brewers, 3-0 against Cincinnati, 1-2 against Atlanta. They've been getting their job done. They're clearly playing well above 600 baseball, and with the way their division is looking, as long as they can handle the Cardinals, they should be clear sailing to win that division. Number 3, dropping 2 spots. We got the Mets, 2-2 against Atlanta, 2-1 against Philly. Not that the Mets really did anything to hurt them from being number 1 the week before. It's just the other 2 teams that kind of were like, all right, I got to give the credit back to where it's due. The Mets have a 6-game lead in their division. That's always helped me in their rankings. And for now, it looks like they're going to keep it up, winning both division matchups this weekend. Number 2, the Yankees, 2-1 against Toronto, 1-1 against Texas. Handled Toronto. They're like the one team that had beaten Toronto heading into this week. And they're top of the division, probably top of the American League, and favorites, in my opinion, to win the American League at this point. Leaving us to number 1, the Dodgers. Just having a monster week, 2-0 against San Fran, 3-0 against the Cubs. Just handling business, handling their division. The only one that I can see catching them at this point is San Diego. They have yet to really play each other other than, I think, 2 games. But we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you guys think of these rankings. I'm sure there's lots that can change. Like I said, there's some interchangeable sections along the way here. But let me know what you guys think. Otherwise, we'll see you guys out there for that next video. Peace out.